Welcome to Our Scars Speak. My name is Christina Miner. I'm the host of this podcast. And before we begin, I want to give a disclaimer that we are not coming up here to be medical professionals. We are coming up here to tell our truth, our story, what has happened to us, also to give information and education to individuals who may want to know, but we're not telling you to denounce or neglect seeing your medical professionals at all. So I just wanted to give that. And tonight, I'm so excited. We have Robyn Towt. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Okay, we have her tonight, and I met her, I think it was through Stand Tall, which is Stand Tall Aesthetic Flat Closure Group. And she is a true advocate for breast cancer survivors, but not only that, for individuals who have had issues with medical devices, one in particular being breast implants. And our stories seem very similar with when it comes to what we've been through. And I have breast implant illness. And so I just wanted her to come on because she's such an advocate. She has a co-founder of an organization. I'm going to let her tell everything about this, but I had to have her on because these things aren't always talked about. They're kind of hidden, some of the information that she has. So thank you for coming on, Robyn. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Great. So before we get into a whole lot, I love to ask people, who are you? So we always have a tendency to talk about the things that we do, and people want to hear that part. But who is Robyn?
You know what? I'm just kind of a small town mom, wife, and former teacher. And I kind of stumbled into advocacy just through my breast cancer journey. Right. I had breast cancer in 2017, and it was kind of a whirlwind. It was the end of the school year for my kids. It was one of the last summers I was going to get to spend with them before they were off on their own in college. So everything happened very quickly, as you know, with a cancer diagnosis. And but in the melee of all of everything that was happening, what I didn't get was proper informed consent for the surgery that I chose to have for reconstruction with breast implants. I had no idea at the time that any of this world existed: breast implant illness, medical device, adverse event reports that are missing or hidden by the FDA. So my eyes have been really opened over the last 5 to 6 years after this happened to me. And I found out about breast implant illness through another breast cancer patient who actually lives in my hometown. And I had gotten so sick so quickly from my implant. And I didn't do chemo, I didn't do radiation, so I couldn't figure out why I was so sick. And when she mentioned breast implant illness, it clicked, because that's all I did was surgery. All I did different than anything else in my life was get those breast implants put in me, and my health completely declined after that.
So let me ask you a question. I'm sorry. So to backtrack a little bit, because I asked who you were, and then so when you got diagnosed, you said pretty much life was great. You know, you were living life as usual. Can you tell us a little bit about how you even discovered that you had an issue with your breast and what that diagnosis was, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I've always been a very type A personality, very busy, on the go, go. And at the time, both of my kids played basketball at our local high school, and I helped run the basketball program. So that's kind of who I was at the time. I was the basketball mom and everything that comes with it. And, I actually have stayed pretty on top of my health problems because I had my first cancer diagnosis when I was 23 years old.
That's right.
Yeah. So I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I had very extensive radiation treatment to my neck and head and chest area. So, I was very fortunate to have an amazing oncologist who shared with me the true risks of having that intensive radiation treatment. He told me things to look out for. He told me that I have a higher risk of getting secondary cancers because of my radiation exposure. So I'm so grateful for him, because the 25 plus years after that diagnosis, I have been really on top of my health, noticing any little thing that goes wrong. Also, because I'm a high risk patient, I started getting mammograms early. I got my first mammogram at age 35. And then that was just a baseline. And then I started getting my regular mammograms at age 40. So what was interesting is 2 years prior to my breast cancer diagnosis, I actually had a lump on the other side.
Oh,
And
wow.
because I'm high risk, of course, I had it biopsied and it came back benign. So I went on with my life for a few years. So then when I had a bad mammogram on the left side, same thing. I had an ultrasound, MRI, biopsy, and that came back showing that I had stage 1 invasive ductal carcinoma.
Wow.
So that's how I found it, was on my routine mammogram.
So it was your routine mammogram. And I think, oh my goodness, your story is very fascinating because of the simple fact you had cancer already. And it seems like you've had great support throughout both situations, especially with that, because you were very young. Was it hard to be diagnosed with that particular cancer versus breast cancer, or was it pretty much because of the team that you had, they were spot on with getting your diagnosis, even though you were 23?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone's first cancer diagnosis is probably the worst, because with breast cancer, I didn't have that frantic feeling that people get when they hear the words, "you have cancer."
Right.
I was very businesslike. I kind of already knew, because when I went in for my biopsy, I left the facility with my actual films, and I came home and I held them up to the window because I actually had films. And
Okay.
and then I, of course, I went on Google and I Googled normal mammograms, mammograms showing calcifications, mammograms showing breast cancer, mammograms showing, all sorts of different things.
Right.
It was classic textbook. So I knew right away. I didn't have an appointment with my doctor for follow-up until the following week. But I told my husband, and he's like, well, let's just wait and see what the doctor said. So, we get to the appointment the next week, and the doctor says you have cancer. And I was like, yeah, I knew that. And then my husband's like, I'm shocked. And I'm like, you knew that? I told you 4 days ago.
I already diagnosed myself.
So for me, with the breast cancer, I just was like, all right, what do I need to do to take care of this? Because summer break is in 2 weeks and I have plans. Like, I got stuff to do. My oldest son was graduating from high school. My youngest one was getting his license. I'm like, we're too busy for this. I don't have time for this.
Right.
So I really just wanted to get it over with as quickly and easily as possible. And, that was it. I had my consults with my breast surgeon, my plastic surgeon, and they made implants sound easy.
Right. So with that, you already had cancer one time before, you went through extensive treatment with the radiation, and then you have this. Was it correlated, or was it that you had a BRCA gene or a mutation? Did you have the testing done?
I don't have any mutations.
Okay.
And the reason I was being followed so closely was because of my radiation exposure. So they definitely said, it was most likely from the radiation.
Okay.
And I've also had basal cell carcinoma, which is skin cancer. I've had that 4 times. And interestingly, because I have dark skin, dark hair, and dark eyes, I'm not a candidate for skin cancer at all. Besides the fact that I live in Arizona, where the sun shines every day of the year. But, I'm not a candidate for skin cancer. And the only place that I had those is where I had really bad radiation burns.
Oh.
I do want to caution your viewers and listeners, like, if you've had radiation, everyone knows what those burns look and feel like, but that skin is very heavily damaged. And back in 1996, I'm dating myself, when I had that radiation, they don't do that kind of radiation anymore. It was very extreme and very damaging. And now we've come so far with medicine and treatments, but now they do typically more targeted therapy. So, they learn from patients like me. So I, blessed that I was able to help the medical community discover that that's not a great thing, but yeah.
But no, that's good information to provide, because even though we've come a long way, we still have a long way to go. And there's still always these side effects, which leads us to the breast implant illness. Can you kind of go over some of the symptoms that you were having? Because I think you and I were kind of going back and forth. You were like, oh my God, we had kind of like the same symptoms.
Yeah, almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
And mine started immediately. Like, I literally woke up from getting my implants. Actually, I had expanders first, and I did not do well with expanders at all. I had them for 3 months. I was miserable the whole time. I was in excruciating pain. And, I've heard people say that expanders weren't as bad as they heard, but, I did have radiation to that area. So maybe mine just was amplified, the pain, just by that.
Expanders are horrible. And plus the expanders are made out of the same material. So you're probably already having symptoms, because I never got to implants.
Yes. And, they don't tell you about the expanders. They don't show you what one looks like. They don't tell you how they install it in your body, that they sew these little tabs to your chest wall. And it literally, I used to describe it as like they inserted a Tupperware dish in my chest. And every morning I would wake up, I was in such pain. I felt like they were going to rip through my skin.
Right.
My skin is thin because I had radiation treatment, but it was excruciating. It was a horrible experience for me. I actually wanted to quit halfway through, and everyone's like, Robyn, you're almost done, just finish it. And you hear that the implants are so much better, they're comfortable, and well, I got the implants and I tanked immediately.
Wow.
I literally woke up from surgery with this unexplained anxiety and just confusion, like something didn't feel right. Something did not feel right. And I'm very in tune with my body.
Right.
And then that week, it started that week. Headaches, migraines every single day. I was having heart palpitations. I felt like I couldn't swallow, like there was something stuck in my throat. I was having a hard time breathing, and I couldn't take a deep breath. So, and that was just the beginning. Then came skin rashes. I had a rash on my chest. I had a rash on my legs. I started not being able to sleep. The insomnia was so debilitating for me. But then the fatigue was even more debilitating, because I would get up in the morning and I only slept 2 to 3 hours, and I was so physically exhausted. And I tried to keep my normal routine, the things that I enjoy doing, going and doing things with my kids and going out for a walk. But I would go out for a walk, and I had to call my husband to come pick me up. I was an eighth of a mile from home, and I could normally go 5 to 7 miles easy, like any time of year. It was so bizarre to me. And then I just literally started feeling like I was dying. Everything hurt. My joints hurt. My muscles hurt. I was very weak. I was very fatigued. I was nauseous. I was having dizzy spells. And so, I resorted to going on these breast cancer forums and trying to talk to other breast cancer patients, like, what is going on with me? And they all kept, oh yeah, I have that too. It's from chemo.
Oh, but you didn't have chemo.
I didn't have chemo.
Yep.
So why do I feel it? I feel like I'm in chemo because I've heard about how horrible chemo is, and that's how I felt. So it wasn't until Michelle, who we're really good friends now, said, look into your breast implants. I worked for a plastic surgeon and I got a boob job, and I was sick for 12 years. And I was like, sick? Like with what? And she started listing her symptoms, and I was literally checking off every single one.
Wow.
So yeah, and I was so miserable at that time. I was like, whatever I can do to get these out as soon as possible. I had them removed in less than 4 months after putting them in.
Yeah. So as you already know, mine, COVID hit. Had I had COVID, I always say COVID helped me out in this sense, as far as I kept the expanders. I went through the capsular contractor breast implant illness, but I had like a fever. I had all your symptoms plus a fever that would not go away, a low grade fever, and gastrointestinal issues, which I was like, maybe that's not a part of it. But then I looked it up and did research, and some women are having gastrointestinal issues with having breast implant illness. Now, my doctor did explain the expanders to me, and she showed them to me before the surgery. But honestly, had I just did the regular from expanders to implants, I probably would have been like you, like the next 4 to 6 months, because I was sick soon as she put them in. Because I remember saying, what's trying to kill me now? And then it was like, oh, the expanders, they hurt, they feel like this. That's what other people were saying. And I was like, no, I feel bad. Like I feel really, really bad. And the walking really concerned me, getting up from a chair and things of that nature. So you did it, you took them out, you explanted in 4 months. I know Mel Robbins. I don't know if you follow her or know of her, but she's a, personality on IG. She had implants. I don't know if you knew her story, but she got them taken out and she says she feels better. Yep. And she talks about it as well. So did that kind of like with you and your friend, did that kind of spark like, let's make for sure that people have information that they need before getting, before off, you can offer it all you want. And by no means are we trying to bash people who have implants or doctors or anybody else, but we just want information out to the public to know what implants may do to some individuals who have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I didn't realize until literally the day I explanted. I woke up from that surgery, and I know you know this feeling, like you can breathe. I could breathe. I could take a deep breath, even though I just had major surgery, and I just had clarity again, and I felt like me again, and it gave me pause. I was like, what just happened here?
Yep. It was total night and day, to the point that when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, I can walk without trying to like manage my gait when I'm getting up. Even after having my chest open back up again, like I could walk better, I could breathe better.
Right.
I felt better, I could think better. And I remember going to my first appointment, and my doctor, she did tell me I had breast implant illness. And she said, you had to have had that. She told me the day of surgery, she said, you have capsular contracture, severe case, and you have breast implant illness. And I said, well, how do you know? And she said, because I believe my patients.
Wow, that is so refreshing to hear, because I had the opposite experience. And I will say, mine was back in 2017, and I did, I Googled, are breast implants safe? And everything that popped up, I wasn't on social media at the time, so I didn't know to look for these Facebook groups all over the place, but because they were, the Facebook groups were around in 2017. It's just I wasn't on Facebook. So when I Googled it, nothing concerning popped up. In fact, I got local ads for local plastic surgeons offering specials for breast augmentations. So, I did it. My doctor didn't tell me anything. And my doctor didn't give me this.
Wow.
Per the FDA, when they approved breast implants, tissue expanders, any of these devices, the FDA prescribed to the manufacturers that they had to give one of these to every patient. And I didn't get one. So had I gotten one, I would have started looking through it to see, what's going on with my health. I actually didn't get this until 5 months after my explant. I actually explanted with a different surgeon than my reconstruction surgeon. And she didn't even know I explanted. I made a follow-up appointment, walked into her office completely flat, told her I had my implants removed by another doctor. And then I asked her for this. And so she went in the back and gave it to me. And I said, why didn't you give this to me with my surgery? And she said, oh, we must have forgot. We try to give one to every patient. And, this pamphlet literally has a page in the back for you to sign with your doctor right here, saying that you received it. See these 2 lines right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're supposed to sign it saying you received this information.
So if you don't mind, when we get off here, you can either send me a picture of it or you can post it on the timeline or whatever. But I think people need to really see that, because you can kind of see it up there. But I know this is also going to be on the podcast. Is there a name of that actual pamphlet? Because you said that's FDA approved, correct?
This is the Mentor. I had Mentor, patient educational brochure for reconstruction. And then on the front, it says breast reconstruction with Mentor memory gel, silicone gel breast implants. So they have these for reconstruction, they have them for tissue expanders, and they have them for augmentation. They're all about the same.
Wow.
There's a couple differences, between reconstruction and augmentation, obviously. So,
oops, sorry. This is playing. Sorry. Go ahead.
But that's what really got me, is my surgeon did not give me the proper information to make an informed and educated decision. Wow. And rather than go back and sue my surgeon, which I probably had a really good case, I was so shocked and upset and irritated. And I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, how many other breast cancer women are suffering, thinking it's from chemo, thinking it's because their doctors didn't tell them either. So that's what got and I'm a teacher. So I love to teach, I love to learn, and I just went down this research rabbit hole And I wanted to find out why my doctor didn't give it to me. How could she get away with this? And I ended up knocking on some doors at my state capitol and having a meeting with some senators and telling them my experience and said, can we make these doctors give us the information that we should have? Absolutely, we can. So we worked for over 2 years to pass a state law here in Arizona. We're the first state to get it done for proper informed consent for breast implant surgery.
Wow.
And now in the state of Arizona, not only do surgeons have to give this book, but I also developed a patient decision checklist, which is on our website, and it's for free. You can print it off. And surgeons have to give that patient decision checklist to every patient, and it's written in easily understood terms that patients can understand. It outlines symptoms to look out for. It outlines autoimmune diseases and illnesses that are caused by breast implants that women are diagnosed with. And that way, if you do start to experience problems, you can look and see that this could be the cause. Because if you didn't have these problems before breast implants, and then you get breast implants, and you start having all these health complications, I mean, you kind of have to start looking at your daily activities. What has changed in my life? Is it my diet? Is it my exercise? In my, in my environmental factors? Nothing had changed in my life, nothing except having that surgery. So of course, when Michelle told me that that could be it, I knew that was it. And then obviously when I explanted and felt better, that just verified it.
Yeah.
So that's really what made me become a patient advocate, is I just didn't want this to happen to somebody else.
Can you kind of speak on the part which we've had conversation about, the autoimmune, whether you have an autoimmune that you don't know about and it can exacerbate it, or if it can cause an autoimmune disease? Can you give us a little bit of information of that knowledge that you have regarding autoimmune diseases and breast implant illness?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
So basically, the year after I explanted, MD Anderson came out with a study in September of 2018. It was the largest study ever done on breast implants, almost 100,000 women. And that study showed that women who have breast implants have a higher instance of having autoimmune diseases and even some cancers like melanoma. So, that's a big study. And that was a very pivotal moment in not only my advocacy journey, but our work with the FDA, because there were advocates that came before me that had already set up meetings with the FDA that were trying to get this information out there and just trying to, make patients more aware. We had no idea how deep this went. I went to a meeting at the FDA in Washington, D.C. Right after that study came out, and I shared my story, and this was a private closed door meeting. And then we ended up 6 months later having a 2-day public hearing where anybody could go and testify. And, there were over 70 of us that testified and shared our story. Breast cancer patients that have been diagnosed with cancer caused by their breast implants were testifying their stories. And then, of course, there was plastic surgeons and industry were there sharing what they knew. And all unbeknownst to us, the FDA was actually hiding over 446,000 reports of women who were harmed by breast implants. That's almost 500,000 women harmed.
And so did they say exactly, like, far as fatalities, did they go into numbers far as with that, or just like the symptoms like you described earlier that you were dealing with?
So they started talking about the symptoms, because anyone can report an adverse event with anything, whether it's a drug, a pharmaceutical, a medical device, vaccines. You can report to the FDA that you've been injured or harmed. And so they would do these keyword searches to look up the symptoms, that women were experiencing from breast implants. And then, of course, we have the cancers that are caused by breast implants. One of the most disappointing parts of my advocacy journey is the FDA has known about these cancers since the early 1990s, and they're only just now starting to talk about them. The FDA banned silicone breast implants for over a decade because so many women were having problems. They were suing Dow Corning, they were suing PIP implants. The manufacturers, had to pay millions of dollars in lawsuits, and then they took them off the market. So I went back and started researching, if these things were banned for over a decade, whose genius idea was it to put them back on the market? And
Right.
somebody had to present some information saying they're safe now.
Mhm.
There's no study that says breast implants are safe. Not one.
Yeah,
I have
I haven't seen any. I mean, not trying, I haven't very, I have gone pretty hard, I advocate too, but as far as actually focusing on breast implants, you definitely have done your research. But I mean, I've done some and I haven't seen anything. I've seen some side effects. I've seen some other studies, like you said, from MD Anderson and other hospitals, but I have not seen where it's like, oh, this is 100% good to go.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that at all. Now I've heard doctors say, oh, you're fine. They're fine. But also to me, I think that's when you start running into more, are you wanting money more so than you're wanting to make sure your patient is safe? I didn't have that experience, and I'm not saying every doctor's like that by no means, so don't take that way, anybody who's listening, but we do, like with anything, there's people who money plays a big factor. But I think that what you're doing is such a pivotal move within this industry of breast implants and just our world of being cancer survivors and patients and thrivers, because we need to know. We need to be able to have the choice to make a right decision for ourselves. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about the cancer? Because I know that I've watched many documents and everything about how the capsule, because some physicians don't necessarily take out the capsule, from my understanding. And that and what I'm talking about, everyone, is that when you have an implant, your body produces a capsule, and you've heard me talk about capsular contraction and scar tissue to protect the body from that foreign object. And some physicians, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Robyn, will not always take out the capsule, and that can kind of hoard some germs, so to speak, and it can also they found that cancers can be in there later. Is that correct? Well, you could probably explain a little bit more about that.
That is 100% correct. We've actually had women who had their implants removed, but the capsules were left in. And 1 year later, 2 years later, 6 years later, because of those capsules were left in their body developed the anaplastic large cell lymphoma from those, because that is where the cancers develop, is in that scar tissue capsule. And you said it so beautifully. And I like to tell patients and anyone who's listening, if you just think of an orange, right? The peel of the orange is the scar tissue capsule. The flesh of the orange is the implant. And our body knows this implant is a foreign object. It doesn't belong in the body. So it starts to wall it off, right? And it builds this capsule, this skin around it. And we know, and we've known since the 1990s, that these cancers develop in that capsule. And I'm sorry, but anyone with a medical degree and a medical license it's not rocket science. It's truly unfortunate that because of their financial interests and their financial ties to industry, they're pushing this narrative. But if cancers develop in the capsule, why would you leave that in the body?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense.
Because I know a lot of times it was pushed that it was because of the textured implants, not so much the silicone smooth implants. But to me, from my research again, it was like, yeah, it may be textured. That was one thing. But then it was like also the capsule that my doctor took mine out. But some doctors I've found, yeah, they leave it inside the body. And it's just so unfortunate because none of this is ever usually talked about. And it's so sad. So I know you said Arizona has definitely pushed, you've gotten it cleared that they have to give this information over to patients. Are all the other states cleared, or any other states cleared, or just Arizona? Like, what do we need and what can we do to help?
Yeah, right now it's just Arizona where it's been signed into law. We are working in several other states, and those same plastic surgeons like to push back on this law because I really am not sure why. I would have to ask them, because it just makes sense to give patients the proper information. I want to back up just for a second and talk about the textured implants, because in 2019, Allergan's textured implants were recalled worldwide for having a higher rate than other manufacturers of causing that ALCL cancer. That's the breast implant associated anaplastic large cell lymphoma. And so back in 2019, the narrative in the plastic surgeon community was, oh, it's just textured implants that are dangerous. And it's really just the Allergan ones. And we went ahead and took those off the market. So there's no problem now. All the other implants are safe. Well, that's not true, because the FDA just put out an announcement in October of 2022 and again in March of 2023 about, it's called squamous cell carcinoma of the breast implant capsule. And I want to be very clear about this cancer, because squamous cell carcinoma is also a skin cancer. And it's very much like the basal cell cancer that I had. It's very treatable. It typically grows slowly. I mean, people can die from any type of cancer, but typically it's not like melanoma where you hear, oh, this is a highly aggressive cancer. So as a skin cancer, it's a very treatable cancer. Millions of people get squamous cell carcinoma every year. They have it removed and they live, happy, healthy lives. Squamous cell carcinoma that develops in a breast implant capsule, number one, it is associated with all types of implants: silicone, saline, textured, smooth. So this opens up a whole new can of worms. It's basically kind of like no one's really safe. But the really unfortunate fact about this cancer is it is highly aggressive. It metastasizes very quickly. And it loves to invade everywhere. Typically, ALCL stays in the capsule. If it does move and migrate out of the capsule, it has been treated. We have had some deaths. And they're kind of downplaying that. Well, it's just a few deaths. It's just a few cancer cases. If we remove the implant in the capsule, we cure ALCL. This squamous cell carcinoma, it invades the sternum, all of the breast, ribs, the heart, the lungs. It loves bones. And so, unfortunately, it doesn't respond to chemotherapy or radiation. So the only way to stop this cancer is to completely remove it. And I've literally seen presentations of these women who just went to their plastic surgeon. They had swelling on one side. The symptoms are very much the same as ALCL. So you will have unilateral or bilateral swelling, which means one breast starts to get bigger than the other. You might have fluid buildup, which is a late seroma. I mean, some of these women, they've had implants for 9 years. You shouldn't be getting a seroma after 9 years. And if you have a seroma, which is a buildup of fluid, you need to do something about it. And so they typically present with the same symptoms as the ALCL patient. And when it's discovered that they have squamous cell carcinoma, I mean, I've literally seen presentations. These women have like a volleyball size hole cut in their chest. And they have to remove ribs and their sternum and repair tissue. And it's horrifying. And then hope for the best, because at 6 months after diagnosis, 50% of the patients are dead.
Wow.
I mean, these are statistics as aggressive as pancreatic cancer, which we know is one of the worst cancers out there. So it's very concerning to me that they've known about this cancer since 1992, as well as ALCL, which have very similar presentations, very similar symptoms. And they've just swept it under the rug and kept it all hush hush because they say it's rare.
Right. And even if it's rare, my point still again is with having just cancer in general, breast cancer in general, we know it can always come back. They tell us to do double mastectomy. They tell us to do this, that, and the third. We do everything we can to save our life. But the point is it can still come back, and it can come back more aggressively. And that's not always shared with us. It's sort of like, oh no, the treatment worked. Everything's great. You're great. And then they wonder why we have these anxieties. And we're not trying to scare anyone out there, but we just need to know the facts, because if I choose to get a implant, I need to know every single little detail that I possibly am facing. Just like having certain surgeries. Why wasn't I told about certain things? for instance, seroma. That's a very good point. And what she's talking about is fluid buildup, but what happens, there's scar tissue that pockets the fluid, and then it's very, very painful because I had it myself. But just informing patients, that is the part that I think we're really trying, we're not trying to scare y'all into knowing all this information, but it's better to know so you can make the right choices and go back and say, hey, look, why wasn't I told this information? If you care to do so, you don't have to do it because we're telling you, but or if you're getting ready to get reconstruction, just question them. Just question, what are the risks of these implants? And if they've already told you, oh, it's fine, ask them about the pamphlet. Ask them about the what is it called? Is it reconstruction? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, the patient education brochure.
Right. Ask them about that. Ask them about information about the particular company so you can research it on your own. And then if you find more questions, you can present it to them. But I think this is very, very good information, Robyn. So with your organization, what are, you want to talk a little bit about that and like what you all are really focusing in on I know you're focusing in on getting more bills presented and passed, but is there anything else that you really want to focus on as far as your organization?
Yeah, so our organization is GPAC, the Global Patient Advocacy Coalition. And we basically focus on medical device safety, patient safety, and we actually kind of stumbled into the world of mesh, surgical mesh as well. In doing my research over the last 5 years, I realized it's not just breast implants. And I really followed, there's a medical device called eSure. It was a birth control device. And there were many women, tens of thousands of women that were harmed and even killed by this device. And those women, they rose up, they banded together, and they got that implant taken off the market because it was so harmful. But it's not just, it could be any birth control device. It could be breast implants. It could be surgical mesh, dental implants, anything foreign that you put in the body, hip implants, shoulder, knee replacements, you can have a reaction to. And so, and we all understand that, but we understand it now because we went through it. Right. But when someone is telling you it's totally safe and this is just what you do after breast cancer, we believe our doctors. And like you said, we need to arm ourselves with the information because if something does start to happen, then we can figure that out. Right. And take steps to change it. No, go ahead.
Right. No. I just seen today, oh gosh, it was about, okay, when you do the biopsy, they put in the clamps, correct? Yes. I just seen something today that there's some recalls on those. So yeah, you're right. It's not just, it's anything you can put in your body. And I think that's the thing that patients need to understand. Anybody who's listening, any foreign object you put in your body, there is always a risk, definitely of infection and anything else. They're not telling you everything. And even if they get some things that they miss, at least let you know this is a possibility. And it's really unfortunate because I think, for instance, I'm gonna use this as an example too, Robyn, for the African-American community, we don't have, our trust issues are not there that much when it comes to medical professionals. And the reason being is because the history of things like this, but even worse. And so for my community, it's like, not only do we have these things now that like you're fighting for the breast implant and different devices, but we also have a history and a lineage of abuse within the medical community. And there's still disparities, not only African-American, but also ageism. I mean, the list goes on, being womanized, being prejudiced against women, sexism. There's so many different things out there. So when you add that on top of the fact that you're not giving me information, I don't trust you. And I'm not saying that I don't trust, but I'm just saying like people have a hard time in trusting people who are supposed to be taking care of them sometimes because when they're being lied to, and it's not all medical professionals, but those who are not being 100% honest.
Right. Well, and that trickles back to the manufacturers and also the FDA.
Oh yeah, not just the doctors.
Yeah, the FDA was put in place to protect us from harm, and to hold medical device and, you know, pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines, to hold manufacturers accountable for making safe products. If they know these products are not safe, if they know these products are causing harm, and then they're hiding that, we have a big problem, a big problem. And I'm glad you brought up the surgical clips, because, you know, in the breast cancer community, we have multiple people that are going in for biopsies, and their biopsy may come back clear like mine did the first time. And what does the doctor do? They put that surgical or that metal clip in there. You know, we have so many patients. There's actually support groups for people with surgical clips. If you've had your tubes tied, you've had a tubal ligation, if you've had any kind of surgery. I have a friend, my friend Amy, and she had like 29 of those clips in her neck from a spinal surgery she had. And here's the interesting thing that I didn't know. It wasn't until I met some of the eShore ladies, that's the birth control device I was telling you about. I met them at a dinner here in Phoenix a few years ago, right before COVID. And I sat down with one of the ladies and I said, tell me your story. And she was telling me her story. And then she started telling me all her symptoms. And my jaw like dropped on the floor. And I'm like, wait a second, do you have breast implants? She's like, no, I've never had breast implants. Her symptoms were almost identical to mine. And hers was from a birth control device. And then mine was from breast implants. And then I stumbled on a couple advocates in the breast cancer and MESH community. And we started creating a MESH patient symptoms list.
Right.
They're identical to the symptoms. Wow. And then of course with MESH, you have additional symptoms where the surgical mesh can migrate into nearby organs and tissues and actually can, you know, strangulate your intestines, your bowels. So it's very problematic, very problematic.
I'm glad you brought up about the fact, because yeah, sometimes doctors can be lied to by the FDA and the people who make it, because I know I worked with doctors who were surgeons and great guys, like they weren't in it for the money or anything, but those individuals who had come from the pharmaceutical companies and different companies that were trying to sell them products made it very glorious. And I'm sure information was left out from those, you know, conversations, just so that the product would be purchased or they would try it at least. But I did work with some really good doctors who, when they started realizing the patients were having certain symptoms with certain devices, they stopped using it and they dissolved contracts. So there are good doctors out there. So yes, I don't want to make it like it's all the doctors, but it's a whole lot of factors involved. I think a whole lot of moving parts that really need to be accountable to each other and to definitely to the patient. So when it comes to, so you're doing the mesh right now and you're doing the breast implants, and what is there anything, you did specify some other ones, but are those areas that you're really looking at far as like with the surgery, with the neck surgery and different things like that, those devices, are you pushing those as well for the patient to have the information?
Yeah, I mean, in my ideal world, I could retire from this job I don't get paid for. But I mean, truly, the FDA is at the top of the pyramid.
Absolutely.
They have the jurisdiction to hold these device manufacturers accountable. Mm-hmm. They're not doing it. And in my perfect world, I wouldn't have to do all this work. The FDA would do their job, right, and they would require manufacturers to put out information like this. And then it would be required of every doctor and every surgeon to give this to patients and sign off on it. And really, that's what needs to happen. I mean, it's a lot of work for a lot of devices if you think of how many medical devices are out there. So, I mean, basically, GPAC is a global coalition, and we have people reaching out to us from all over the world. We work with breast implant and mesh advocates in so many different countries. And I mean, you just never know. I'll have someone from India who will reach out to me and say, I just had a double knee replacement and I am so sick. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard, I think, for some people to understand that something in your knee can cause literally systemic head to toe problems. Yeah. My hair was falling out. My eyelashes fell out. I lost about half of my eyelashes. I had these bald chunks missing, and I have really nice eyelashes. I had 2 bald spots in my head like an old man. You would not relate that to your breast implants or your knees, or, you know, you had a tubal ligation or a birth control device. Right. Why would your hair fall out from something like that? but it's systemic. Your body is fighting this 24/7. And you brought up earlier, and I'll touch a little bit on that too. It says right here in this booklet that if you have an existing autoimmune condition, it's a contraindication for getting breast implants. How many women went in that they already had Hashimoto's or lupus or fibromyalgia and they're getting breast implants? It's going to exacerbate those symptoms. But also sometimes people don't even have an autoimmune disease yet. And what we hear over and over and over again in the groups is, I was totally fine, totally healthy. And after I got the implants, I got lupus, Hashimoto's, fibromyalgia, connective tissue disease, joint pain, brain fog, you name it. So, there's something there. What is it? I don't know. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher or a doctor, but there's something there that's triggering our immune system to just literally go haywire.
And that's what I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and then it's so funny because those same key opinion leaders that say we don't need to take the capsules out, breast implants are safe. It's so interesting to me because even their own study that they published recently shows that 90% of patients that remove their breast implants feel better and have improved health. It's not rocket science. What is the cause? The breast implants. That's it.
Yeah, my doctor, she just automatically told me flat out, because then I went back and I researched it and I was like, oh, because in a lot of the articles it states that pretty much they don't know, and it could be like a mental thing. It could be like the patient really is making it up, sort of like how they used to treat fibromyalgia, like, oh, it's just in your head. So I came back to her, I was like, oh, you think this is in my head? Like, I want it. She's like, no, you wanted implants. You were set on implants. You were set on what you wanted to do. You didn't know anything about it. She's like, you had no clue. She said, but because I believe in my patients and what they tell me and what I've seen throughout the years, I know exactly what this is. And then she's seen the night and day result. And she was like, yeah, it's definitely that. And so I questioned her about it. And she said, well, the thing about it doesn't happen to everyone. She said, so could you have an autoimmune? Possibly. And it exacerbated it. Could it be just straight up, it's just the implant and that's it? But obviously I know that it has something to do with it, because when I put it in your chest, you weren't sick from day one. So her thing was, though, like, it doesn't. And like we said, it's not, these symptoms aren't happening to everyone, but we need to be aware. I think the other thing, which I'm sure you also share with your patients, is that if you're getting it taken out, to make for sure, because I know Dr. Espina, that's who my doctor is. I just love her. Dr. Espina, she told me that after she took it out, the capsule and everything, she had all of that tested. She had it tested for infection, everything. And at the time I hadn't done a whole bunch of research on like the capsule and everything till later. And I was like, wow, she really protected me. And she did tell me there was another device that she possibly could have used to try to help. But I told her before she went in, I said, I don't know what you need to do, but I just know that I want to feel better. And I'm trusting you to make the right choice by me. And I was so damaged, she would not put anything back in my chest. And she said, if I wanted something, even my own tissue, I had to heal for at least a year. But she tested everything. And I think it's important, which I'm sure you already tell people this, that if they get an explant or a change of implants, even if it's a change of implants, to ask your doctor if they're going to test the tissue, correct?
Right. Absolutely. And especially if you have those symptoms like swelling, pain, seroma, and it's even months or years after you got your implants and you didn't have that before. I mean, that's definitely cause for concern to be, I mean, we don't want to scare people, but we also want to be educated. And, if these cancers do develop, they can be treatable if they're caught early. So that's all we're asking. But to be so reckless and irresponsible to suggest, first of all, not even removing capsules, because let's think of this. If you're not removing capsules, you're not testing capsules, so you won't find those cancers.
Right.
Maybe that's what they want. Maybe they don't want as many cancer cases, because that would be bad for implants, wouldn't it? Yeah. But at the end of the day, my job is patients come first. The patient needs to be at the center of the healthcare team, and everybody needs to rally around the patient and do what's best for the patient. And that is the only solution. It cannot be any other way. but unfortunately it is. And I encourage people, you can look up your doctor on open payments, cms.gov, or Dollars for Docs. It's another website, and you can type in your surgeon's name and you can see if they've taken money from pharmaceutical industries, medical device manufacturers. And it's interesting because these thought leaders, these key opinion leaders that are kind of pushing these narratives that don't make sense, if you go and look up their open payments data, you can see why they're pushing that narrative. I mean, they've been paid over $1 million from breast implant manufacturers. And some of them that were the highest promoters of that implant that just got recalled in 2019, they're now working for a new implant company that's hoping to get FDA approval this year called Motiva. It's the breast implant that has a microchip in it.
Wow.
And the same people who were working on those Allergan cancer-causing implants, they ditched that now because they're recalled worldwide. Now they're working on this new implant, and they're going to tell us this is safe and effective, and this is the new gold standard, just like they told us with Allergan. So buyer beware. Buyer beware. Know the people who are behind the product, because if you start researching that, you can really see how it all fits together.
Yeah, because it's so sad, because you hear so many, I've heard so many patients either say, I've heard two things. I was only told to do this particular surgery. I wasn't even offered to get a double mastectomy or a mastectomy. I was just told to do a lumpectomy. Or over here, you hear, I wasn't offered deep flat. I wasn't offered Goldilocks. I wasn't offered flat. I was just offered implants. And I'm like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I always stress to them, and I try to forewarn them, like, these are some of the options. I may not know all of them, but I know some of them. And I try to give them like information before they go into the doctor, and at least let them tell you every single one. And when you decide on your treatment plan, explain it to you and explain the risk, not just oh, well, we've had this great. No, I want to hear everything. So is there anything else you would like to share about what you're doing or about what has happened to you before we wrap up? I didn't know if there was anything else particularly that you want to share about anything.
I think for the most part, we just need to keep being vocal. We need to keep supporting each other in these groups and sharing this information. I've come to the realization that unfortunately the FDA isn't going to do it anytime soon. So we have to be that support system for our sisters, because it is a whirlwind when you get diagnosed. There's so many different treatment options. There's so many different surgical options, and ask questions. I encourage people to ask questions, ask for the information. I mean, it might be scary to hear, but we need to know. I didn't do chemotherapy, but I did meet with a chemotherapy nurse, and they had a plan set up for me if I chose to do that. And she sat down with me and told me about each drug and told me what the side effects were. Same thing should happen with your surgical procedures, whether you're going flat or doing Goldilocks or deep. You need to know what you're getting yourself into, because, I encourage plastic surgeons all the time. I say, please get to know your patients. I know that your time is limited, and how much you get to spend with each patient, but you need to know their lifestyle. If there's a woman who is, an avid hiker or marathon runner or a horseback rider, some of these surgeries are not going to be a good choice for them.
Right.
And so you need to really get to know your patients. What is their lifestyle? I am very physically active. I'm very energetic. I'm very on the go all the time.
Right.
So for me, I didn't even consider the flap surgeries, because I know how long of a surgery it is, multiple incision sites, and a very long recovery period. I don't like being down. I mean, I can't even be down for 48 hours with a cold.
Right.
I go surgery. So I don't want to be down for 12 weeks,
Right.
So get to know your patients, and patients, tell your doctors, look, this is really important to me. I want to be able to exercise every day. I'm a yoga instructor. I need range of motion to do the poses. Like, please tell your doctors what your lifestyle is, so that they can help you make an informed choice on what surgical options are best for you.
And that is so powerful as well, because some people are not given the option at all. at all. And it's really sad because sometimes it makes for them to have to go back and get more surgery because they may have lacked range of motion or what have you. And anything can happen with any of the surgeries, but I know for a fact that's very important because my doctor asked me, okay, if you were trying to have children, maybe a double mastectomy isn't good if you want a nurse. Like, she really gets to know the patient, and that makes for a very good relationship with the patient. And then you don't feel as nervous about how the treatment plan is going for you when your doctor knows you. So I think that is great. Is there anything else as far as that you're doing, like life after breast cancer? I hear it's full of advocacy, but is there anything else after? Because it's not really after, it's now, because I like to say before, during, and now. So you explain pretty much before, during, and now, but is there anything else that you're doing or that's coming up, an event or anything that you would want people to know about?
We actually have had two now. We've had the Breast Implant Health Summit. We had one in 2020, and then we had one last year in 2022. So that'll be up and coming next year in 2024. So be looking for that because there's going to be some great presentations and a lot of amazing information. And then, I just kind of try to balance my advocacy with where do I feel like, I can target an audience that may not have heard this information before. There's a golf tournament in LA that's coming up in October that I'm going to be speaking at that event. I did it last year. It was a really great event, and we're hoping to like double in size this year and have even more people. So, and then just working on legislation, working on awareness, working, and meeting with the FDA. The end of August, early September, I don't have a date yet, but we're going to be doing a roundtable discussion. It'll be several hours long, probably on a Saturday, but we're going to have a lot of amazing surgeons come on and basically very low key. Like, it's not going to be a formal, because they have their annual meetings where they have presentations and they get CME credits. This is more informal, just roundtable discussion, because there's a lot to talk about. And, I have these monthly Zoom calls with a bunch of explant surgeons, and it's so productive. It's so productive to listen to them talk and share ideas. And, what are you seeing in your practice? What are you doing for this? And them networking. So, and then we'll have Dr. Scott Glassberg from ASPS, who's basically been in charge of all of the SCC cases. He's a wealth of information. He knows all about the cases. He just actually published a great paper on that information. So I put it on my Facebook and pages. So yeah, those are the most important things coming up. And then, just life.
Good. So I will definitely post your I think I already did it, but I'll do it again, your organization, and then I'll post whatever other information you just spoke about. I'll go back on your timeline and look, and I'll post it on mine to share it with the community.
Thank you.
So we are coming to an end since this is wrapping up, and you chose, it's always about the music for me. The information was phenomenal, and people have definitely chimed in throughout and were saying thank you for the information. And someone wrote a very long, I think a breast cancer survivor was talking about the mesh as well. So yeah, so you got some good feedback. But
can I go on there and answer questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't mind that at all. I'm not a hoarder like that. Just have at it. Because you're very educated. I'm not touching it. Like, I'm surface level when it comes to this. But you chose the song Unwritten. Natasha, can't remember her last name. Belling something. I can't remember.
Bedingfield.
Okay. So you chose that particular song, and I'm just curious, why did you choose that song?
I feel like everything with me is a constant metamorphosis. It's just constantly changing. I'm super dynamic, and I don't know what's next ever. I never know what's coming my way, and I just kind of take it and roll with the punches. Very strong in my faith, and it's pretty pivotal when you get to a certain point where you're like, what's really cool? I can just put it in God's hands.
Yeah.
And know that I'm going to be okay. And so I like the lyrics. I have the lyrics pulled up on my phone, but just the beginning, I'm unwritten, can't read my mind. I'm undefined. I'm just beginning. the pen's in my hand, the ending's unplanned. I have no idea where I'm going to be a year from now, 5 years from now. But I'm excited to find out, and I'm up for the challenge, and I just roll with it,
Okay. So the next question is, before you leave the audience, what one word can you give individuals who are listening, who are still dealing with wounds that are healing, and maybe even looking at scars and sometimes getting disappointed at the scars that they see, even though they speak a story, but they're just not there yet? What's an encouraging word that you can leave the audience with, and why that word?
I would have to say empowerment. And I think that's an important word. It can be difficult, especially if you're in a place where, you're not liking what you see, or you're not liking how you feel. Maybe you're having some side effects from treatment. But we have to remember, every day that you wake up, you can empower yourself to live your best life. And we are not our scars. We are not what happened to us. I am still the same person that I was before being diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm still the same mom. I'm the same wife. I'm the same, teacher and helper and neighbor. So are you. And I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in all the ancillary things that come with a cancer diagnosis. And it's a lot. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. It's, it's a roller coaster of emotions. You might feel sad one day, angry the next, resentful, but just stop and breathe and know that it's going to be okay. You just take each day, day by day, and empower yourself to get through that day. And some days are going to be hard. And I never tell people like, oh, just be positive, because cancer people get mad at that. Don't tell me to be positive. You didn't lose your hair, or you don't have radiation burns that you can't sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And I never tell people just always be positive. None of us can always be positive all the time. If you're having a crappy day, go for it. Cry. I mean, I was on my closet floor, literally bawling, screaming, and just in so much pain from the implants. But don't pitch a tent and camp there.
I love it.
You can have a bad day. You can have a bad week, or even a bad month. But, there's people out there who love you, who support you, who want to help you. Oh, that's my best piece of advice too, because I've been doing it long time. The best thing I did was accept help. And that's really hard for me, because I'm a doer. I like to do things. I like to just push through it. But the best thing I did for my health after my double mastectomy was allow my neighbor to set up like a meal train. And I had families that would come and check on me and bring a meal for my family every day. I had 2 teenage boys to feed at the time. So that was such a huge help. And you know what? They were happy to do it. And it's not being a burden. It's because people don't know what to do to help. Let them help. Let them drive you to your chemo appointment. Let them bring you a meal. Let them take you to get a pedicure if that's going to make you feel better. Best advice I can give. And I very rarely allow people to help, because I'm like, no, I don't want to burden anyone and inconvenience anyone. But I learned, it was a very hard lesson for me to learn, but I learned how to be fulfilled by letting people help. So
awesome. Well, now it's time for me to leave you with the word. Okay, so my word for you is dominus. I'm a believer as well. And as I was trying to study Greek and Hebrew, at one point, I fell in love with the word dominus because it means power in Greek. And when I think of you and hear you speak, I can hear power. Some people have passion and you sense it, you see it, but then some people have that extra power from I say on high on them, to allow them to do things that are beyond even comprehension of the human mind, because it's an actual superpower from God that he's given unto us. So I would say my word for you is, don't forget how much of dominus power that you have from God to continue to pursue on and help the patients who either are continually trying to fight and speak, or those who are silent because they feel like they can't speak, or those who have gone on in transition who cannot speak at all. So that's the word that I'll leave you with.
Thank you. I love it.
You're welcome. Well, this has been great, and you have some catching up to do on the timeline. It seems like some people left some information, well, saying thank you and a message, but I thank you so much for your time. And I thank all of you for listening and for sharing this moment with us on Our Scars Speak. And remember that our mental and physical scars speak a story. They speak a story of what we've been through and what even some of us are still going through. So make for sure that you share those stories if you feel the time is right, because you can help another person with their actual wounds. So thank you very much. And until next time, we love you and we hope you have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks.